There are many Space Marine chapter masters in the Imperium. Some are brilliant commanders, some are legendary heroes, some are respected for their wisdom, their discipline, or their mastery of war. And then there is Tyberos, known as the Red Wake, Reaper Lord of the Void, Shade Lord of the Carcharodons. Tyberos is not remembered because he gives inspiring speeches or because he leads his warriors from a command throne far behind the front lines. He is remembered because when Tyberos enters a battlefield, the enemy knows that something monstrous has arrived. Even among the Adeptus Astartes, Tyberos is an abnormality. The Space Marines of the Carcharodons are already notorious for their enormous size, brutal appearance, and savage methods of war. Yet Tyberos towers over even his fellow Carcharodons. He is a giant among giants. His physical size is so extreme that his Terminator Armour had to be heavily modified simply to accommodate his enormous frame. And despite his immense size, Tyberos is not some slow-moving brute. He is a terrifyingly efficient killer, silent, cold, unmoving. When Tyberos speaks, he does not shout. He does not need to. His words are delivered in a quiet whisper, yet those who hear him understand that his decisions are final. To the Carcharodons, he is not merely their chapter master. He is their Shade Lord. He is the master of the battle barge Nicol. He commands the chapter's elite first company, the Red Brethren, and he personally leads some of the most violent assaults carried out by the Carcharodons. But perhaps the best way to understand Tyberos is to look at the weapons he carries. Because the Red Wake does not carry ordinary weapons. He carries two ancient relic gauntlets known as Hunger and Slake. Together, they are among the most horrifying weapons associated with any Space Marine commander. At first glance, Hunger and Slake resemble enormous lightning claws, but they are far more brutal than conventional lightning claws. Each gauntlet combines vicious power blades with mechanical chain blades positioned like an enormous metallic jaw. The weapons tear, crush, and shred their victims simultaneously. Their construction is so unusual that even the tech priests of Mars are unable to identify their exact pattern or origin. They are ancient archaeotech. Their true history is uncertain, and there is a particularly dark story surrounding how Tyberos obtained them. According to whispers within the Carcharodons, the weapons once belonged to a mysterious Raven Guard-descended force known as the Ashen Claws. The Ashen Claws were descended from a Terran formation associated with the Raven Guard Legion that was sent into the Outer Dark during the Great Crusade. Separated from the mainstream Imperium, these warriors eventually became a renegade Black Shield force. Yet they survived. Hidden in the darkness beyond the Imperium's conventional reach, the Ashen Claws continued to exist for thousands of years, and eventually they established dealings with the Carcharodons. The two forces traded technology, they exchanged recruits, they negotiated, but eventually one of those encounters became something far more personal. Tyberos was provoked into a duel with the Ashen Claws chapter master, Nehat Nev. The confrontation was brutal, and when it was over, Tyberos was the one left standing. He claimed Hunger and Slake as his prize. The Ashen Claws never forgot the humiliation, and their hatred toward the Carcharodons continued. But by the time Tyberos entered the wider Imperial records, his reputation had already become something far more frightening. That happened during the Badab War. The Badab War was one of the most significant conflicts involving Space Marines during the late 41st millennium. The conflict began as a rebellion against Imperial authority led by Luft Huron and the Astral Claws, eventually drawing numerous Space Marine chapters into the fighting. Loyalist forces were assembled, secessionist forces resisted, and the Maelstrom Zone became a massive battlefield. Then, in 910.M41, something unexpected appeared. A Carcharodons fleet emerged from the darkness. They had not been expected by the Loyalists. They had not been expected by the secessionists. Their arrival caused alarm on both sides. The Carcharodons were mysterious. They had spent enormous periods of time operating far from the Imperium's central authorities. Their methods were unusual. Their appearance was intimidating, and their loyalty had to be established. At the center of this uncertainty stood Tyberos. The Red Wake approached the Loyalist command. Instead of simply demanding that the Carcharodons be accepted, he provided documentation proving the chapter's legitimacy. These were ancient notices patent issued by High Lords of Terror and Inquisitors who had been dead for centuries. Tyberos even allowed the Imperial authorities to verify his identity. He submitted to psychic examination. His gene seed was sampled. The Loyalists investigated the Carcharodons as thoroughly as possible. Eventually, the Inquisitor Legate accepted them. Lord Commander Carab Culn of the Red Scorpions also accepted the Carcharodons into the Loyalist war effort. But suspicion remained. The Carcharodons had spent so long in the outer darkness that their interpretation of the Codex Astartes had diverged significantly from the traditions followed by many other chapters. They were not conventional space marines. They did not fight like conventional space marines, and Tyberos certainly did not command like a conventional chapter master. But there was one argument that ultimately mattered more than everything else. The Carcharodons were extremely effective, and Tyberos was one of the most terrifying warriors on the battlefield. Throughout the Badab War, the Red Wake led the Carcharodons' elite Terminators into battle. Again and again, he appeared at the head of his warriors. Again and again, the same pattern repeated. The Carcharodons would attack, the enemy would attempt to resist, and Tyberos would lead the assault directly into the heart of the opposing force. His Terminator Armour allowed him to advance through fire that would destroy ordinary infantry. His enormous frame made him an intimidating target, and Hunger and Slake transformed every close-quarters engagement into a massacre. Those who witnessed Tyberos in battle described something almost elemental. Not a commander directing a battle from behind, not a noble warrior dueling an enemy champion, a killing machine. A giant moving through the battlefield. Everywhere he went, bodies were left behind. Armor was torn apart, warriors were cut down, and the Red Wake continued advancing. This is where the name Tyberos becomes important. The Red Wake is not merely a title, it is an image. Imagine a ship moving through dark water. Behind it comes a wake, but where Tyberos passes, the wake is red. A trail of blood, a trail of destruction, a trail created by the enemies unfortunate enough to stand in his path. His role within the Carcharodons is also unusual. Tyberos did not simply keep the veterans of his first company together as one massive formation. Instead, he distributed veteran warriors throughout the chapter's other companies. These veterans served several purposes. They were force multipliers. They were experienced warriors capable of transforming ordinary squads into far more dangerous combat units. But they also served as Tyberos' eyes and ears. The Carcharodons operate across enormous distances. Their fleets can become isolated. Their campaigns can take them into regions where communication with Imperial authorities is limited. Tyberos therefore needed a way to ensure that the chapter remained loyal to its own traditions and objectives. The Red Brethren served as his representatives. They watched, they listened, and when necessary, they enforced. This made the First Company more than an elite combat formation. It became part of Tyberos' authority throughout the entire chapter. The Red Wake could therefore influence the Carcharodons, even when he was not personally present. But when Tyberos did appear personally, there was little doubt about who had arrived. His armor is almost as intimidating as the warrior wearing it. Tyberos wears an ancient pattern of tactical dreadnought armor. It has been heavily modified to accommodate his enormous body. The armor is constructed from thick layers of ceramite and plasteel, reinforced with adamantium. Dozens of brass bonding studs are visible across the armor plates. The entire suit has an archaic appearance. It looks less like the polished war gear of a modern Imperial commander and more like an ancient relic that has survived countless campaigns. The armor is grey and brutal, functional, heavy, almost primitive in its appearance. And then there is his helmet. Tyberos' helm has a distinctive boar-like appearance. Its black lenses are completely emotionless. A skull hangs from a chain around his waist. The skull is old. Its bones have yellowed with age. It hangs there like a reminder of what happens to those who face the Red Wake. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Tyberos is what lies beneath the helmet. When his face has been seen, it has been described as something resembling a corpse. His skin is corpse white. Parts of the bones of his face are exposed. His eyes are dark and seemingly empty. His expression is not one of anger. It is something colder, something almost inhuman. and that is fitting for the master of the Carcharodons. The Space Marines of the chapter are often compared to predators. They operate like sharks. They emerge from the darkness, they attack with overwhelming violence, and they disappear again. Tyberos is the ultimate expression of this philosophy. He is not a roaring berserker. He does not need rage to kill. He is controlled, focused, deliberate. The violence is simply what happens when he reaches his target. His reputation during the Badab War grew because of this combination of physical power and terrifying discipline. Tyberos did not simply charge into battle randomly. He led his warriors, he selected the point of attack, and then he personally entered the killing zone. His Terminators followed him. Together, they became an unstoppable assault force. The Carcharodons' reputation for brutality was already significant, but Tyberos elevated it. He became the symbol of everything that made the chapter feared. The Carcharodons were already outsiders. They had spent generations in the darkness beyond the Imperium. Their culture had become strange. Their methods were severe. Their appearance was unsettling, and their approach to warfare was uncompromising. Then there was their chapter master, a warrior so large that ordinary Terminator Armour could not properly contain him. A commander who spoke in whispers. A warrior who carried 2 mysterious relic weapons capable of tearing apart Space Marines. A veteran of countless conflicts. And a figure who could turn a conventional assault into a massacre. The Badab War demonstrated exactly why the Imperium eventually accepted the Carcharodons. They were terrifying. But they were terrifying in the service of the Imperium. And when the Loyalists needed overwhelming force, Tyberos provided it. The final stages of the Badab War became increasingly brutal. The Loyalist forces needed to crush the secessionists quickly. Every additional battle cost lives. Every delay gave the enemy more time to resist. The Carcharodons were therefore exactly the kind of force the Loyalists needed. They were not diplomats. They were not peacekeepers. They were executioners. And Tyberos was their greatest executioner. He led his veterans into one assault after another. The enemy saw the Carcharodons coming, and somewhere within that advancing mass of grey-armoured warriors was the enormous figure of the Red Wake. Hunger on one side, Slake on the other, power blades ready, chain blades spinning. The sound alone must have been horrifying. The mechanical teeth of the weapons grinding against armour. The roar of Terminator Armour's servos, the impact of a Space Marine giant crashing into the enemy line, and then silence. Because Tyberos himself rarely needed to say much, his reputation spoke for him. There is also something fascinating about his relationship with the Carcharodons. A chapter master is supposed to command, but Tyberos represents something deeper. He embodies the chapter's identity. The Carcharodons are creatures of the void. They are predators that emerge from darkness. They are hunters. Tyberos is their ultimate hunter. His title, Reaper Lord of the Void, perfectly captures this. He is not simply a commander who happens to fight. He is a warrior whose authority is reinforced every time he personally enters combat. His presence tells his warriors that the most dangerous enemy is now within reach. And it tells the enemy something even worse. The Carcharodons are not going to negotiate. They are not going to retreat. They have come to kill. Yet despite all the legends surrounding Tyberos, there is still much that remains unknown. His exact age is uncertain. The complete history of his weapons remains uncertain. The full origins of the Carcharodons themselves are surrounded by mystery. Even the identity of the genetic lineage from which the chapter ultimately descends has been debated and obscured by secrecy. And Tyberos fits perfectly into that mystery. He is a warrior who seems almost deliberately designed to become a legend. A giant in ancient Terminator armor, a silent commander, a chapter master who personally leads assaults, a warrior armed with weapons that even the tech priests of Mars cannot fully identify, a figure whose appearance is closer to a corpse than a living man, and a warrior whose reputation was forged in the bloodiest battles of the Badab War. But perhaps what makes Tyberos most frightening is not his size, it is not his armor, it is not Hunger and Slake. It is the complete absence of hesitation. Tyberos does not need to prove that he is dangerous. He does not need to boast. He does not need to threaten his enemies. He simply arrives. And when the Red Wake appears on the battlefield, everyone knows what follows. The Carcharodons advance. The Terminators move forward. The enemy line begins to break, and Tyberos enters the fight. Hunger tears into armor. Slake cuts through flesh and ceramite. The Red Wake keeps moving, and behind him remains the crimson trail that gave him his name. For most Space Marines, battle is a duty. For some, it is a calling. For Tyberos, it seems almost inseparable from his existence. He is the master of a chapter that lives in the darkness. He is the commander of warriors who fight like predators, and he is himself the largest predator among them. Tyberos the Red Wake is therefore more than just another chapter master. He is the embodiment of the Carcharodons, silent, ancient, massive, unforgiving. A warrior who emerges from the void, delivers death, and disappears back into the darkness. And somewhere beyond the light of the Imperium, the Nickel continues its passage through the void. The Carcharodons continue their endless campaigns. The Red Brethren continue to watch over the chapter. And at the head of them all stands Tyberos, the Reaper Lord of the Void, the Shade Lord, the Red Wake. A giant even among Space Marines, a commander who speaks in whispers, a warrior armed with Hunger and Slake, and one of the most terrifying figures ever to emerge from the darkness of the Imperium.